Welcome, everyone. So thank you for coming. I'm going to start this webinar by lighting a candle. It's one of the rituals that we do to be more mindful, to be grounded, and to remind us that this is heart work. This is sacred work that we're doing. And also, to me, it feels communal when we light a candle as well. So what I'm going to do is a real quick exercise with all of you, just because for us, we can be hurried to get here. I don't know about you guys. So if you want to just go along, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, we're just going to get into our body, taking a nice deep breath and feeling some groundedness with the floor below us, noticing our feet on the floor, our chair supporting us. And on the next breath, maybe releasing your shoulders, releasing your, all of your tension that you might hold in your back. And then with an open heart, thinking about your intention for tonight. And then the gratitude that we have a community and that we have this opportunity to speak with all of you. So on the next breath, go ahead and just wiggle your fingers and toes and come back in your body and give it any attention it needs. Some of us may need a glass of water or to adjust ourselves or a pillow behind our back. So welcome. I'm Kathleen Putnam. I am one of the 5 Gentle Passage Doula Collective founders, and we have come together to offer services that help our community. And we found out that the community really wanted training and they really wanted membership and people to get together with and to consult with and training. So we have an 8-week training, and we have done these in person and we have done them virtually as well. And so we have both a virtual and an in-person training coming up. And the in-person training is going to be in the Pacific Northwest. And what we find when we speak to people asking about being a doula is usually people say, I don't know why, but I have a calling. Or they can think of a particular death or time in their life where they felt like they had a calling and that it didn't scare them, but they noticed other people got scared. And so we really want to bring information, practical tools, and community together. And I love Benjamin Franklin's quote, teach me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I will learn. So our training is very immersive and inclusive. And so we really want participation. And we really believe that we're a lot more confident if we can actually put it into practice. And the practices and information that we share with you will continue. We have a community where we meet monthly, twice a month, for an opportunity to connect. And so now I'm going to pass this on to Colleen.
Thanks, Kathleen. So my name is Colleen Hughes. I'm an end-of-life doula and conscious dying educator. I also, by profession, am an RN. And just so I can qualify that, to be an end-of-life doula, you do not have to be in the healthcare profession. It's probably preferred you're not. So I'll just leave it at that because we will talk further about the non-medical aspect of this care. So in this first slide, we are all just walking each other home, and Ram Dass is misspelled. It's supposed to be an A in there. Uh, and I love this quote because we are all just walking each other home. If we think about being born, the minute we're born, we are really dying because in the end, we will all die. And so I like to think of it, as a joyous experience, but we're trying to make a death positive culture. And so we're trying to get on the other end people to also look at death as a very positive experience as well. So dying can be very frightening, and we are living, so we don't know what it's like to die. We only know what we have seen or been attending to, if we have. So one afternoon, I was kind of pondering the mystery called death, as I often do. And I was looking at a picture of my parents with me as a toddler. And one was on each side of me, and they had my hand. It's one of my very favorite pictures. And as I looked at this, I was just walking along, and they were teaching me the beginning steps of my life's journey toward home. And so, if we fast forward this scene to my father dying, I took him outside when he was able and in a wheelchair, actually. He was still conscious and everything, but he wanted to touch his rose bushes. He wanted to touch each plant. He wanted to go downstairs and look at his ham radio set, and he touched each piece. And I was looking at this, and I said, he's saying goodbye, and I am with him, and I'm going to be walking him to the gate, walking him home. And then 5 years later, it was my mother dying in a freestanding hospice in Oregon. And I was sitting with her the night before she transitioned. I was holding what we call vigil. And as I sat there and I was watching her breathe, I thought back on this moment and said, I was with her and I was walking her home on her journey. She hadn't arrived there yet, but I was with her. And the next morning, my sister and I were with her as she took her last breath. And the staff washed her body, and they placed flower petals all around her and placed a quilt on top of her body, but her head was left uncovered, which I was thankful for. And by the way, this whole experience was what planted a seed in me, and it's why I do what I do today. So my sister and I wheeled her with the staff down a long hallway, both illuminated on each side with electric candlelights. And as I look back on this, we were walking her home into the night when the funeral director took her body, and they didn't cover her until she was way out of sight. And so, as end of life doulas, we walk people home. We provide the companionship. We rock them right to the end if we're present. And we're non-medical providers. We give support care, and we are companions, and we support the dying and their loved ones, the family. So this is just an important brief concept, and we'll get into a little bit more later. So normalizing talking about death, you see two pictures here. You see one of death, and you see one of a regular person who's alive, and I'm terrified of death, and that's our society. And then you see death laying on the couch. Everybody hates me. Well, what we're really talking about when we talk about normalizing death is we live in our bubble of denial. Because you see, we really don't want to talk about death if we can avoid it at all costs. However, given a safe place, people really do want to talk about death. Or if they find somebody who is willing to listen and is not fearful, they they will talk about death. I have a client right now who told me that she cannot talk to her friends. They're freaked out. But she says, she likes talking to me because we just talk about death and we talk about life as well. So making death part of life, and I always tell the story, it was told by someone who later wrote a book. She was a nurse, and she tells the story of coming in for of a story of a woman coming in for chemotherapy, and she had end of life symptoms, but didn't appear to be aware that she had end of life symptoms. So the nurse asked her colleague, "Why is this woman not aware that she is dying?" And the other nurse answered, "Well, we have one doctor who is really good at talking with the dying and talking about dying, and we have one who isn't. And it really depends on which one you get." So this nurse decided to quit nursing, and she wrote a book called Love Your Life to Death. And by the way, that is a very common thing I see with people. Unfortunately, I see it where the doctor really doesn't talk about death, doesn't say, "We're just getting to the point where we can't do anymore," or "we can't do anymore." And I also see where families don't know the individual is in the dying phase. So these are all things that we talk about in our program. And everyone really should have a toolkit when you're talking about normalizing death. And that toolbox is about wills and advance directives and funeral plans and writing down your beliefs and your values. So talking about death really doesn't kill you. It, if anything, it gives you a sense of your meaning in life. And the goal is to produce a death positive movement and take it out of the closet so everybody can talk about it. We have, for instance, in our collective, a death cafe, and we run it one Friday a month. And we have people from all over who come to this and talk about death. It's a safe place. There's Death Over Dinner that's gone national right now. So there's places where people can get together and talk. Normalizing death is very crucial to wellness and reducing anxiety, and it really influences how we live. Because you see, people often say, "Well, aren't you depressed doing this work?" No, I'm not depressed doing this work, because what it has done for me is make me so aware of being alive. And it gives me more vitality, and it makes me say, "Oh, I'm not going to live forever." So it does influence how we choose to live or how we live, and it prioritizes who we spend our time with. We don't waste as much time. And it also helps us define how we're going to serve others in the community. And it does another thing. We can, if we're comfortable talking about death, we will be comfortable talking to our parents about dying. So I say take time to reflect, talk to those close to you, and educate yourself, reading some fantastic books that are out there right now on death and dying. Barbara Carnes is she's a nurse, hospice nurse, internationally renowned, recognized author and speaker, a thought leader. She's an expert in this field, and she's has her own company now, BK Books, and she's written many education materials that you can find all over. You can find them in people's homes. I've seen caregivers have them. I've seen the hospice. I've seen doctors' offices. It's everywhere. Anyway, she clarifies the word dying. She says, dying is when the body's breathing, and then one moment, and then the function stops. And she also emphasizes you are living until you take your last breath. So, this idea of a community, a human event, not a medical event, when we're talking about months and weeks before death, the body is approaching death, but it's not dying yet. So therefore, it needs medical intervention. There's pain management, there's bowel and bladder care, there's skin care. So you do need doctors and nurses at that point. But days and hours before death, it turns communal. Not to say that the community isn't involved when medicine's involved, but once you go into the dying process, it's basically medicine can't do anything else. And so it's companioning, it's supportive care, it's comfort care that doulas provide. And they give support to the dying and the families, and they educate the families. They help them take care of any kind of, or they address any kinds of fears they may have, because many people do not know what the dying process looks like. The dying don't know what the dying process looks like. And so the doula is there to neutralize these fears, and they're there to create a sacred space, which is really, really important. And Kathy, I think it's your turn.
Thanks. I'm Kathy Bates. I'm one of the founders of the General Passage Doula Collective. I'm also a social worker and have a private practice as well as also being a social worker in senior center community adult day health. So why are death doulas becoming more popular now? Well, there's several reasons, and there is an increased demand for end-of-life doulas. When I became certified through the Conscious Dying Institute in March, May of 2019, most people did not know what an end-of-life doula was. I had a hospitalizations in 21. They still didn't know. I was actually educating doctors, nurses, chaplains, and social workers about what an end-of-life doula is. And the other issue is, of course, the silver tsunami. It is that, and I think the changing way that we are looking at death and dying since COVID as well. But I want to tell you a couple of facts. Anyone born from between 1946 and 1964, by 2030, we are going to be 73 million plus. It is an unprecedented number of people who will be seniors receiving care in the community. And so that's really quite a startling number. And of that number, it is significant to know that social isolation of people 65 years and older, over 20% of those folks do not have family or extended family or even a large social network community to help them in this process. And of course, one of the other big situations is caregiver shortage. And that's not coming. It's both of all of these things are here. We're struggling enormously in the healthcare systems. When you try to get a doctor's appointment, unless you're just about the brink of dying, it is very difficult to get a doctor's appointment these days. And sometimes it's 6 weeks, 3-4 months before you could see a specialist as well. But the caregiver shortage is not only in the doctors, not only in the hospital, doctor's office, but it's also healthcare providers. That could be home healthcare agencies that are having difficulty, and even sometimes hospice is having a difficult time with having enough staff to help. And we'll certainly talk a lot more about palliative care and hospice a little bit later. But the other significant change that's really been taking place over the last 5 to 6 years is that people are now more open to talking about death and dying than ever before. A lot of it has to do with our death cafes. It has a lot to do, as I said earlier, with COVID. But it's been a shifting. It's been an incredible paradigm shift that's been taking place over the last few years. And another aspect is that people want alternative to the traditional healthcare setting. Most people, if you were to ask or poll them, 80% of the folks polled would say they want to die at home. Well, how many people do you think actually get a chance to die at home? It's coming up. It's like 20% and a little bit more. And that is actually transitioning as we speak as well. And that is because of the education and the opportunities that end-of-life doulas are now able to provide to their communities, whether that's a small or large, medium-sized communities. I think too, also one of the aspects is that end-of-life doulas really are providing holistic care. And so we're looking at the whole individual. Whereas in the healthcare system, we are oftentimes looking at the reason why a person was brought to the hospital or the ED. But now that we have end-of-life doulas in the more in the community, it is very helpful. The other piece that I want to go back to just a moment before we go on to the role here is that individuals who want to become an end-of-life doula, they are seeking meaning and purpose in their life, and they are called to this, and it is a heart call to be able to respond and to give to others of themselves. Thanks, Colleen. Go ahead, next slide. So what is end-of-life doula? The role itself is a huge continuum in so many ways. And as you begin to really think about becoming an end-of-life doula and what type you want, and to nurture and marinate with what that means, let me share a lot of things that the role of an end-of-life doula does. But first and foremost is that we are non-medical, non-judgmental, and we are providing spiritual, emotional, psychological, physical support for individuals and their loved ones. And we do this by providing information and education about death and dying. Oftentimes, a lot of folks, in fact, when we've done a couple of classes, we've had people who've worked for hospice who did not know and understand what the active dying phase was. And it was astounding to us who have been educating that they didn't realize that. They hadn't been taught that. But if you think about it, both in nursing and doctors, medical school, our society does not spend very much time educating people about the death and dying process. So information. One of the other things is that we provide and create a peaceful environment so that the individual has the opportunity to actually have difficult conversations, to be able to ask big, bold questions that sometimes has been heretofore absolutely taboo to ask. And oftentimes we as end-of-life doulas can be asked, what's it like to die? Well, we don't actually know specifically because we haven't died ourselves. However, for those of us who have been at the bedside, and I have for over 30 years, I'll never forget this one situation in a skilled nursing community. And the husband asked me that question, well, what's going to happen? How's it going to happen? And it was much as my innate intuition to pick up the hand of the lady who was in the process of dying and hold the hand of the husband. And I began to paint scenarios about possible ways that her end of life would take place. And I kept looking and talking back and forth. And a few minutes later, I realized that she actually peacefully died. And what a blessing that was for this gentleman who was afraid and scared. And they were in their late 80s, early 90s. And so to have such a peaceful death that was full of some grace and beauty was a great gift. And I consider myself totally a conduit to assist folks here. But we also, in the role, we help personalize a plan of care for end of dying. It's about making sure that people have their advance directives and their durable power of attorney paperwork, because those things are very important, as Maureen will get into during our course. If you have a family dynamics that can be challenging, having a durable power of attorney, having a point person is a godsend. Otherwise, it can be a real challenge. I remember years ago, a doctor and I got very much in trouble for a 2.5-hour care conference with a family of 6 children because the mother hadn't been able to say what she wanted at end of life. And so we had to build consensus within the family system, which means that you needed to give each person in the family time to talk about what their concerns are, what their worries are, what their fears are. And in the end of this conference, the majority was for, and the other 2 chose actually to go with the majority. They weren't excited about it per se, but they were supportive of one another. And so that's an important role that we as an end-of-life doula can do, is creating that space to have difficult conversations, not only with the individual who's moving towards the end of their lives, because oftentimes we don't have the client, the person who's dying, literally could be unresponsive and unable to share what their beliefs are. And so we get to have time with the family members, and we get to hear different perspectives, because if you have a large family, like 6 or 7 kids, it can be same house, different home. And so they have a different perspective about what mom or dad or sister wants at the end of life as well. That was true for me, myself, with my mom at the end of her life. And I lived here and they all lived in California. And my sister's right next to me said, Mom wants to live no matter what. I said, I don't think so. And it was the most important thing is to give grace. So she took my mom for a long drive and found out my mother did not want to live. She didn't want chemo for her breast cancer, and she didn't want to have any extraordinary. It was hard for this sister, because that was part of her belief system, is that to live it no matter what. But she was able to come to respecting what my mom's wishes were, which was a great gift, in my opinion. The other thing that I think is so important is not only advocacy, not only creating a peaceful process, peaceful environment process for the family members, but it's also to be building what I call holding space. In fact, we have lots of resources that talk about holding space, and there's a great book by Amy Wright Glenn on holding space. But what that means is our ability to provide deep listening, to be fully present in the moment, so that you are there for the individual, so that they can have the opportunity to talk about their worries, their fears. And is our role as an end-of-life doula, part of our job is helping decrease the unnecessary suffering, trauma, and fear that comes from the dying process. I have someone new recently, and when I asked her what was one of her biggest concerns, has to do with pain, that she would die a painful death. And so that's where we get a chance to really provide some education about how pain management can be addressed. And not that we're doing it, but the hospice team would be doing that. And I guess the most important piece here is advocacy, but also how we help model and, in essence, I think, teach empowerment, that we foster the empowerment so that an individual's wishes and desires are met. Those needs are met about wanting to do that. The worst thing that could happen is that a person who did not want any family members around had every family member. And I can give that example later, but that was quite an amazing situation. So advocating, fostering in, and empowering the individual, thereby we help decrease fear and uncertainty and unnecessary suffering and trauma. Next slide, please. So what are the most important skills and quality of an end-of-life doula? Part of it is being your authentic self that feels great compassion and empathy. As I mentioned earlier, the deep listening, your ability to be fully present. And sometimes being fully present means being at the bedside 2, 3, 4 hours. One occasion I had a long while ago was 8 hours with a family system. And it was one of those situations where I just listened to the intuition and actually stayed with this entire family system until midnight, until actually everybody was asleep, and where it was calm and peaceful. So that's part of our helping our doulas listen to their innate knowledge and intuition. It's our desire to respond to people who have needs and don't know how to ask those difficult questions. A calming presence, our ability to provide resources when people need those. That could be home health care providers. It could be all kinds of things. I tend to call myself a Yenta, and it's a matchmaker of needs and services, because that's what I do. But I think one of the most important qualities as an end-of-life doula has to do with being able to meet the person right where they are, that it's not our agenda and it's not our the family member's agenda, but it is how we can help the individual have a journey toward the end of their life that is peaceful, that can be full of love. And I love to say, and this is bears out time and time again, in the end, love is what really matters more than anything else. So what we provide as an end-of-life doula is really a caring heart to ease pain. And when I talk about pain, I'm talking about the pain that can happen for people emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically. Bonnie, thank you. Bonnie?
You're muted.
Somebody muted me. They were afraid I was going to talk too much. Anyway, what you see on the screen is the titles of each of the modules that we cover in the class. And so if you want to take a look at those while I'm talking, please do.
Colleen, can you share the screen, please?
What?
Are we sharing the screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay, it's not showing up on mine.
Okay, can you all see the screen? Everybody else can?
I see full screen. Is it there?
Yep.
Click thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to keep going. I am a nurse as well, one of the founders of this Gentle Passage Doula Collective. I've been a nurse for 55 years. I just figured it out now. I just celebrated my 55th year as a nurse, so that's exciting for me. I work most of my practice in skilled nursing, and really enjoyed that part of nursing because I got to spend a lot of time with my residents, and by time I mean years, because our residents often stayed with us for years, and so we really got to know them. We got to know their families, and so I wish back then that we would have had doulas that could have come in and helped people at the end of their life. Now we have hospice, and that's wonderful. And so we are doulas are an adjunct to hospice, and we're starting to see more hospices hire doulas as well. So it's definitely coming into the mainstream. I spent the last 12 years of my career teaching at the University of Washington School of Nursing out at the Bothell campus. I also taught at Western and Northwest University as well. So what I liked about this program is that the two of my other colleagues also were faculty in different universities, and what we were able to really bring to this program is developing program content that I think is really helpful to the people who take our course. Now I'll tell you, I took two courses. I took one course that was a weekend course that I had to do some stuff on my own. And then I took a longer term course that was over a 6-month period. And in fact, a couple of my colleagues have done something similar. And one of the things we really realized as we were putting this program together is that a weekend course works for some people, but it's not always enough. And the 6-month course was way too much information for people to absorb. And so that's why we created this program where once you finish our training, you will have what it takes to get started in this program. And it's the reason that we have people that want to stay with our collective, because we give you more information along the way. And I think someone's going to talk about what we offer, but those additional things that we do, if you stay with us, you will get more training than this, but this will set you up to do this work. And so we try to create the best of both worlds, really, for people. So you got enough to get going, and then you can develop your skill as you develop your business, if you're going to set it up as a business, or if you're going to work with a company, or if you're going to start your own collective. I mean, that's always a possibility. I personally teach the spiritual support in this group. Although we can all teach all aspects of this because we've done it so much. I do a lot of the stuff about the pain management, pain and suffering, that kind of thing. But the nice thing about this is that it's interactive. When Kathy and Colleen do things on rituals, you really get a sense of what it's like to do a ritual or to receive a ritual or to yourself. And it's really very, like I say, interactive. And we have found a way, I think, based on feedback we've had, to do it both online and in person. So keep in mind, these are the topics, and I'm not going to read them to you, and I'm not going to go into each one, but we find that once people start in this, they really pick up on it pretty quickly. So can we go to the next slide, please? So our training is very practical, and I think we really learned this as we've been doing this program now for a couple of years, and we find that it being immersive is really important. That it's, we try to just really have you experience it so that it's experiential. As I said, several of us have an educator background, but those of us who were nurses, we've been in nursing for a while. Maureen has a hospice and oncology background. Kathleen is also faculty. She comes with a nutrition background, and she's a grief coach. And so there's all these, we all bring different things to the group, which I think has been really helpful to our students that have worked with us and have stayed with us. Community development is a really important piece for us. We want to develop a community of doulas. We don't want to just educate doulas and then put them out there and say, go for it. We want you to be able to come back to us when we do our coaching session. That's really open for them. You bring whatever challenges you're facing and we talk them through. You get to hear other people's perspectives. We all learn things as we're out in the community doing this work. And we have a supportive learning style, I think, that people have really appreciated. So I know that, I do take some clients. I still work as a nurse. I'm a nurse consultant for long-term care. I'm a parish nurse in my Catholic parish. We started a program there using some of this material to try to teach Catholics how to die, how to have a good death. So, and there's lots of, a lot of this does spill over into parish nursing, and a lot of communities have that opportunity. So I'm going to now pass it over to,
Me.
Maureen, are you next?
I'm next.
Yep, Maureen.
Okay, and I cannot see anything but your beautiful faces, so I'm just going to wing it. My name's Maureen Curis, and I am one of the co-founders, like everyone, all the other presenters here, of the Gentle Passage Doula Collective. And as Bonnie said, I've been a nurse for 40 years this past February. And most of my nursing has been in end-of-life fields, oncology, hospice, ICU, those types of things. And I have a passion for teaching this. So I am thinking that our first slide that I'm supposed to be on is what sets us apart. One of the things I want to really stress is that we have 5 different people teaching. And some of the feedback we've gotten is it's so great to have 5 different teaching styles because we all have different learning styles. And so people have found that very unique and encouraging for them. And also, I love to share the fact that 3 of us are or currently or have been university professors. So I am so proud to work with those 3 because it really, I think it's rich curriculum that's been created because of their knowledge and background. So I want to jump in and talk about what you get if you join into the Gentle Passage Doula Collective training. So as Bonnie had shared and the others, we have either an 8-week virtual training that's going to start on September 25th. It's their Wednesday nights from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. So you can calculate your time zone. If you're on the East Coast, sorry, that's 8:30 at night. And then that will run through, I think, November 13th. We also have our in-person training that will be hosted here in the Seattle area on September 28th and 29th, Saturday and Sunday. And those are full days. They're from 8:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. At the end of both of these trainings, you will receive a certificate of completion. Doula training is not regulated at this time. And so it is not a certified program like a certified nurse's aide. It is a certificate of completion. And someday we do believe much sooner than probably we hope that it will be regulated. Having been a hospice nurse in a highly regulated field, there's good and bad to both of that. So we're really excited about that. The other thing is that if you are a licensed professional, either a nurse, or CNA, I think healthcare assistant, we offer 14 either continuing education units for nurses and continuing education credits for CNAs. So those are licensed through Leading Age, which is a long-term care, oversees long-term care in Washington State and other parts of the country, and DSHS. So that's something you get for joining our training. Bonnie mentioned that we have monthly coaching. So we teach you in this training what we feel you need to know. And then each month we supplement with what is good to know, because this is an ongoing learning process. You know, this is part of lifelong learning, and there's always so much more to know. So we start by teaching every month on a subject we feel is important for doulas to know and be knowledgeable in. And we offer our monthly coaching on the first Tuesday of every month. So that's where you can bring your questions about building a doula business. If you've had issues, issues good or bad, working with a client and want to just talk it through, we are your mentors and your coaches and your guides on the side. And we have a Facebook community. And we're here to help and support you as much as we can. So part of our training, that your fee will pay for the year-long membership, which means you get those training webinars for the first year at no additional cost. What else is on that slide that I might be missing?
Death cafes?
Oh, yes, thank you. I know Lana was at our Death Cafe on Friday. We have a monthly Death Cafe on the second Friday of every month at 12:30 Pacific time. And we started those back in 2021. I think it was September of 21, or was it September of 2020? I think it was September of 2020 now that I'm saying it, but we've been going with those. That's a safe space to come. They are not recorded. Safe space to come and talk about end of life issues. It's not really the place to come and talk about building your doula business if you're a doula, but asking questions, sharing stories, or just sitting back and listening if that's what you want to do. But we've had people from all over the world attend our death cafes, and they're really very rich and rewarding to those of us that host, because we have heard just such phenomenal, important stories and sharing. So you might be asking, well, how much does this cost? So our fees for our in-person and virtual are the same. It's $1,299, but we are offering a $300 discount if you register by the end of the month. And I do have discount codes for that. So if you are interested in the virtual training, that 8-week virtual course, the discount code is capital F, fall as in autumn, fall 24, just fall and the number 24, but with the F being capitalized. And the in-person is fall 2024 with the F being capitalized. Very original, I know, but that's our cost for now. And I think now we can open it up to questions. We really want to be here to answer any questions you might have. Oh, thank you, Kathleen, for putting that in. And yeah, there was something I was just thinking of telling you and I can't remember. So hopefully that question will spur me. So would really love for you to ask us questions and see how we can be supportive of you.